father and a son, talking after years. Narrator only, conversation-based story. The narrator begins by describing a small, quiet room where two people sit across from each other, a father and a son. They have not spoken properly in many years, and the silence between them feels heavier than any argument they ever had. The father is the first to break the silence, not with words of emotion, but with a simple question about life. The narrator explains that this question is not really about life at all. It is about distance, about years lost, and about a man who never learned how to speak his feelings out loud. The son listens carefully. He answers politely, but inside him, memories begin to surface. The narrator tells us how the son remembers his childhood clearly, how his father was always present, yet somehow always absent. The man worked hard, provided everything, but never spoke the language of comfort. As the conversation continues, the narrator reveals that the father talks about responsibility. He explains how he believed being a good father meant being strong, silent, and unbreakable. The narrator adds that this belief was inherited from a generation where emotions were seen as weakness. The son responds by talking about independence. The narrator makes it clear that the son's words are calm, but beneath them lies years of unanswered questions. He speaks about leaving home, about building his own life, and about learning things the hard way. What he does not say directly is that he left not just to grow, but to escape the quiet pain of not being understood. The narrator slows down here, allowing the weight of the moment to settle. He describes how the father notices changes in his son, the confidence, the tired eyes, the scars of adulthood. The father talks about pride, but the narrator explains that this pride is mixed with regret. Pride for the man his son has become, and regret for not being the one who guided him emotionally. The son then speaks about failure. The narrator explains that this is unexpected. The son admits he has failed many times in life. He talks about moments when he wished his father had been there, not to fix things, but simply to listen. The narrator highlights how this confession changes the air in the room. The father listens more than he speaks now. The narrator reveals that this is rare for him. For the first time, the father begins to understand that silence was not strength. It was distance. As the conversation deepens, the narrator describes the father talking about his own childhood. He explains how the father grew up without guidance, without warmth, learning early that survival came before emotion. The narrator connects this past to the present, showing how pain travels quietly from one generation to the next. The son hears this story for the first time. The narrator explains that understanding does not erase pain, but it softens it. The son realizes that his father did not withhold love intentionally. He simply did not know how to express it. The narrator describes a moment where both men pause. No one speaks, yet everything is being said. The silence is no longer heavy. It is honest. The father then talks about apology. Not directly, not perfectly, but sincerely. The narrator explains that some people apologize through explanations rather than words. This is one of those moments. The son responds by acknowledging the effort. The narrator makes it clear that forgiveness is not instant, but it begins here. He does not erase the past, but he allows space for a different future. As the conversation moves toward its end, the narrator reflects on how time changes people. He explains that maturity often comes with understanding that parents are not heroes or villains. They are human. The father speaks about fear. The narrator reveals that his greatest fear was raising a weak son, and in doing so, he forgot to raise a hard son. The son speaks about strength. The narrator explains that real strength, he has learned, is being able to speak, to feel, and to forgive. The narrator brings the story toward a quiet conclusion. The two men do not hug dramatically. They do not cry openly. Instead, they sit a little closer than before. The story ends with the narrator explaining that some conversations do not fix everything, but they change the direction of what comes next, and sometimes that is enough.